very much sudding, so I don't know, like, I think I'm using them right. I poured them into the laundry with my cold wash as normal, because I was like, oh, if I switch to like doing warm and hot washes after doing cold this whole time, it kind of like negates the environmental benefit of like buying soap nuts in the first place. So I mixed them in with my regular cold wash, and I don't know, I've just kind of pulled my clothes out now and they look clean. They smell fine. I'm happy with it. I don't know how I feel about it in the long run, but if you can use it for making like a detergent, that seems like a really good idea. So like you just pour, you probably just put like 10 half shells into a liter of boiling water, simmer for 10 minutes, and then like fill it into bottles. I would imagine that's basically what she did.
Yeah, I can I just pulled up the recipe that I found because I figured we might want to link to it anyway.
Yeah, perfect.
But it's this blogger called My Plastic Free Life. And she basically said she makes this detergent, but because soap nuts spoil, you have to keep it in the fridge. So she basically makes this about once a month. Although I think she was speaking for a full family, so you might want to have the recipe or something.
Well, if my soap nuts are spoiled, then I mean, shoot, that explains part of my problem. I mean, I've had them for a year.
I don't know if they spoil when they're dry so fast, but when they're in the liquid form.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Anyway, look into that. But
I see. Well, that's what I wasn't sure. I'm like, can they go bad? Because they're literally just shells. So I don't know. I just used them for the first time in a year and they seemed the same. So I would say that's fine.
I think if you make the liquid detergent, though, refrigerate it so we don't get a repeat of the toothpaste.
Yeah. So I actually, just to, like, before you get too far away from the toothpaste, I was looking at doing a challenge where I made my own laundry detergent. And when I looked into it, I basically found that just like with my toothpaste, I'm going to go ahead and leave this one to the chemists because it didn't, like, a lot of people who do their own homemade detergents have like residue left in their clothes and it's just like not getting your stuff clean. So
I don't know. I'm still using Tide, so full disclosure, I am evil for a number of reasons.
Well, we'll get there. We'll talk about detergents at the end because I do have one that I am excited to talk about. Before we move on, though, I found a really cool, it's an Edmonton-based website. So holla to Edmonton, where we both met. But it's really cool. I found it when I was looking up, I think, basically hot versus cold laundry. And it's called changeforclimate.ca. And it has like all of these actions that you can take, like small actions in your daily life that will basically improve your climate footprint. And it's something that you can do yourself because a lot of people care about the environment and they're like, well, what can I do? And this
website is the city of Edmonton. That's so cool.
Yes, it's really cool. Yeah. Like I found it and I was like, wow, good for you, Edmonton. Like everybody should have this. And it's really well laid out. Like whoever designed this website did a bang up job. So we'll link to that for sure. I just wanted to give that a shout out because I thought it was fantastic. Is it microplastics time?
We've really been teasing the microfibers thing, but we could really quickly just cover off cruelty-free, which is the only other thing that we really talked about.
I love it. Perfect.
Just tell everybody that I have not switched my detergent. I did a different challenge this time because my detergent bottle is like basically full. So next time I have to get something, I will not just be lazy and get Tide. But in addition to detergent, it being detergent that's in a plastic container, it is not cruelty-free, which means that they test on animals. So just bad Kristen. I know I'm wrong. What did you buy?
Well, if you decide that you want to get a new detergent, I picked up a detergent called Nature Clean. Which it's first of all, it smells great, which is like the first thing I look for, obviously soap nuts notwithstanding. But basically on the back, it's like, it's got the PETA cruelty-free and vegan logo. It hasn't been tested on animals. It's safe for kids. It's like USDA certified bio-based product. So it's like all natural sort of stuff. Not that I don't really care. Like chemicals are fine as long as it's the emissions of making the chemicals that really are problematic. But I'm sure this has emissions too. And then also, it was made in Canada. So, like, I think that's really cool. I feel like really good about this laundry detergent that I bought. And then I felt immediately bad about it because I have soap nuts.
For listeners at home, Kyla is sort of holding up the bottle as though she's in a commercial. It's very nice.
So I'll link to their like website or something if anybody else wants to see it. But I've done a load or two of laundry with this, and I've been really happy with it. So, and then I remembered my soap nuts and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably use those too. Cause this is definitely not waste free. It comes in a plastic bottle, sadly.
Yeah, actually that detergent was when we did our cruelty free episode. That was one of the ones that I scanned in the Cruelty Cutter app. And it does pass muster.
Yes, I forgot to download that app and I was going to ask you to tell me what it was so I could double check it. And I forgot until this moment. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, Cruelty Cutter. But the only downside is it's not waste free. But I mean, I think it's going to be the case with so many of these episodes that you just can't balance all of the different values unless you're really willing to inconvenience yourself. So like, yeah, you could make your own soap nut detergent every month and throw in vinegar during the rinse cycle.
It's so much trouble.
That does seem like, yeah, but it does seem inconvenient. And I think it's okay that like not everybody has to be on board for the really sort of radical extremes all the time, you know?
Well, and I think the more we shop for this sort of stuff, the more it will become available. So like if we're asking for waste-free laundry detergent or we're buying it when we can find it, then, you know, people will make it because there's money there. So we'll see what we can do, I guess.
Yeah. But let's talk about microplastics.
Oh, wait. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, let's talk about it.
Sure. So the clothing industry produces more than 42 million tons of synthetic fibers every year, which is a lot of synthetic fibers. And that equates to about 80% polyester. So like of the synthetics, polyester is by far the most common. So approximately 2/3 of all textiles are now synthetic. And that mainly means that it comes from petroleum-based organic polymers like polyester. So mostly when you're buying clothing, it is going to be from synthetic fibers. That is a problem because these fabrics, like all other fabrics, leach into the water supply. But unlike organic fibers like cotton and wool, the synthetic fibers cause a lot of trouble to the environment. So when these small fibers come off of clothing in the wash because they're too small to be captured by washing machine filters, at least most, there are a few that are good for this now. They make their way into sewage treatment plants, and sewage treatment plants generally can't filter them either. So then the treated wastewater is then dumped into rivers and oceans, which means that microplastics end up in our water supplies. Synthetic clothing releases somewhere between 500,000 and 6 million microfibers per wash, and that is bad because it really sort of fucks up the oceans and the rivers. So plastic microfibers have been found everywhere from the sort of Arctic sea ice to the bottom of the ocean, and animals ingest them. Humans are ingesting them constantly, and it is not good for any of us. It's really bad. One of the things that I did for my challenge, there's sort of two components to my challenge. The first one is I actually went through my wardrobe and I just tallied like how many synthetic fiber versus blend versus organic fibers do I have?
Oh, yikes. I bet that was depressing.
Well, it was depressing first because I realized I have more than 50 items of clothing because I was just looking at clean clothes and I got to 56 and I wasn't even counting socks or underwear. So like, need to Marie Kondo that shit. But to like a thrift store. I don't know. I always feel bad about throwing stuff away if I'm gonna potentially use it. So, but anyway, of those 56, I had more than half, like the vast majority, were either synthetic or blended. So I had 22 synthetic, 21 that were blends, and only 12 that were organic. So it was mostly cotton, but I had one thing that was wool. And then there was one that I didn't quite know how to classify because it's something called viscose that seems to be like it's made from organic materials rather than from like petroleum-based stuff. So it's like it's not like a natural fabric, but it also doesn't have the same, from what I'm understanding, like harmful properties for the environment if it leaches. So I wasn't really sure where to classify that, but I only had one thing that was just that. Everything else was like a blend with like polyester or nylon or something. So yeah, at the end of the day, I found that like not a lot of my stuff was fully cotton. A lot of it was either blended or totally synthetic. And it was interesting because I kind of expected the higher quality clothes to be more often like fully cotton or wool.
But they're not. And it's like,
They're
what am
totally
I paying
not.
for? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're paying probably for human rights.
Oh, not always though.
Quality.
A lot of it's just
depends.
the brand name.
Depends for sure.
Yeah.
We'll do clothing. But like my definitely sweatshop Gap plaid thing I'm wearing right now is 100% cotton. So scores badly on a lot of ethical things, but at least with microfibers, that's not going to be a problem.
That's the thing about like the microplastics thing that I was looking into. It's really hard not to fall down a fast fashion sinkhole. And we're going to do an episode on fast fashion. So there's a lot of the issues there that we will get back to, but just the microplastics alone is just, it's awful.
Yeah. With microplastics, basically anytime you have synthetic clothing, it's going to be something that you want to look at. There are some things that you can do just by having, like, if you're not using heavy or delicate wash cycles, you can reduce the fibers that leach somewhat. So just by changing to like the regular cycle, you can somewhat reduce the amount of fabrics that are leached, fibers that are leached. But for the most part, what you're going to want to do is, first of all, you could just wash your clothing less. That will reduce the extent to which the fibers are leaching. So Kyla's crushing it with her one load of laundry a week.
Or a month if my Airbnb is stopping me.
But there are at least 3 fiber collecting devices that you can get. The first one is something called Lint Lover. It seems to be very effective. Basically, it's like an apparatus that you install outside of your laundry machine, and it filters the water once it leaves the washing machine. So if you own your own washing machine, the Lint Lover is probably a really good idea because there was a study that some University of Toronto researchers did that found basically it captures about 87% of microfibers, which is obviously not perfect, but it's a lot better than nothing. And that's pretty effective, and it's not going to impact the quality of your wash or anything like that. You really don't have to think about it except to sort of clean it occasionally, you know? So that's one option, and it's a pretty good option if you can do it. Another option is something called the Cora ball, which is part of what I did for the challenge. And it's basically like, it's this ball that looks a little bit like a round blue pine cone. It's basically made from recycled plastic. It's also recyclable, although you can't just put it in your municipal recycling thing. You have to follow the instructions from the producer. But you basically just throw the Cora ball in with your load of laundry, and then you take it out after the wash cycle's done. And over time, the microfibers build up on the ball. And so just like a hairbrush, you'd like occasionally take it out. But honestly, I've been using it for a month now, and I have not had to clean it yet. I see very few fibers built up on there.
Where did you get that?
I bought it at VegFest Toronto, but you can buy it online too. Basically, if you go anywhere that like virtue signals, like a waste-free shop or anything like that, usually the Cora ball is sold there. But yeah, you can also buy it online. And it's cool. It's supposed to last for many years, so you don't really have to think about it as a disposable product. And then eventually when you do want to get rid of it, if you do, then you can actually recycle it. So that's great. The downside with the Cora ball is that it's less effective at capturing microfibers. So it only gets about 26% of the fibers. So
you got to use them both together, really?
Yeah. I mean, even if you use them both in combination, the Cora balls, I mean, it's making a difference, but it's not making a huge difference, honestly. Having said that, it affects the wash in no way, so I throw it in every time. So that's great.
I bet it helps with like lint and stuff too. Oh, actually no, because that's in the dryer cycle. So I'm picturing a dryer ball, but you're putting it in with the wash.
Yeah, I put it in with the wash so it doesn't get in the water supply. Yeah, but it's I don't know, I have not noticed it in any way on my clothing. So it doesn't really change anything except that it captures some microfibers. But again, it's capturing about a quarter of the microfibers. So you still got another 75% to go. The other thing to note about the Cora Ball is that it's about $50. So it's not a cheap item. Having said that, you're supposed to be able to use it for many years. So if you think of it as like a one-time investment, that's actually pretty cheap. But yeah, it's a bit of an upfront cost, as I think is the case with a lot of environmental goods. You've got to put in the upfront cost, even though over time it may not be more expensive.
Or the government could subsidize this stuff and give it away. Like, I remember in Edmonton when they gave everybody like recycling bins and everyone's like, but we don't want to recycle. But then the government just like provides the bins and then you just do it. It's fine.
The problem is now people throw garbage in the recycling bins, and so we're all ruining things. But we'll do an episode on all the time. Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things like a green planet.
So the third capture device, which is something I stopped using because I found that it was not super convenient, but I'm going to start using again after researching for this episode. It's called the Guppy Bag. It's essentially a bag made out of something that is called polyamide 6.6. I don't know what that is, but basically you fill the clothing bag no more than half full with clothing, and then you put it in the washing machine. And the clothing, first of all, it's designed so that there's less friction. So the clothing, like, it wears less in general. So it's supposed to be better for the fabric over the long term. And secondly, it then is very effective at capturing microfibers. Now, the Guppy Bag was not included in the study that I mentioned before, where I gave you the figures for the Cora Ball and Lint Lover. So I don't know exactly how effective it is, but the organization that makes it seems to be fairly serious about their purpose. Like they're a mission-based group out of Germany, I believe. And they claim that it's almost 100% effective at capturing microfibers, which kind of makes sense because, like, you're washing it in this enclosed bag, and the only possible way it can seep out is through, like, the zipper portion. So probably is pretty effective, I would guess. The Guppy Bag is really good for capturing fibers, but it does limit the amount of laundry you can put into a load. So I had stopped using it for that reason. So I was like, my laundry loads are so small that I have to use basically twice as many loads, and I was just worried about how much water I was using, and it was inconvenient. But now that I've looked into it a little more, it seems like a good option is to add non-synthetic clothing outside of the Guppy Bag, so that so if you put like that's cottons or whatever, then you can actually do a full load of laundry, and you don't have to worry so much because it doesn't really matter if cotton leaches into the water supply. It's not going to hurt fish or anything like that.
Okay, cool.
So that was the challenge that I did, basically. Beyond getting, like, either not washing your clothing enough or getting a capture device, the other solution is to just buy exclusively from natural fibers, but that's pretty difficult.
Not feasible for everybody.
Yeah, it's difficult to do. For me, anyway, I found it would require replacing a lot of my wardrobe. The other thing is there is some evidence that certain synthetics are better than others, but there's not really enough research on it yet. One study found that polyester cotton blends release less microfibers per wash. So maybe getting an organic synthetic blend might be better, but we've still got to wait on more science for that.
Well, and the downside to this, too, is that if you're buying clothes that are made from, like, recycled material, then they're even more likely to leach into the water. So it's like you're trying to do a good thing on the one hand, and then with the other hand, you're doing a bad thing. So it's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
What are the solutions?
Yeah, like that was a debate that I had with myself while I was counting my clothes and realized that my, like, girlfriend collective leggings, which are made from, like, recycled synthetic fibers, like, they're definitely leaching into the environment, and I didn't think about that when I purchased them.
No, it's like, this podcast is fun, but it's making me realize, like, exactly how evil I am all the time. Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, and, like, when it comes to, like, this microplastic stuff, like, I saw a statistic that basically the International Union for Conservation of Nature calculates that like 35% of the microplastic pollution in the water comes from the washing synthetic textiles. So Europe and Central Asia alone dump the equivalent of 54 plastic bags worth of microplastics per person per week into the oceans.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. There's so much plastic everywhere.
Oh my God. And I was like on I was on Greenpeace's website, greenpeace.org, and they say that one piece of clothing can release up to 700,000 microplastics in a single wash. I'm not 100% sure where they got that number. A few other places seem to be saying the same thing. So I think there was a study done. If I can find it, I'll link to it. But even if that
I actually have the study for that.
Oh, great. Yeah. Perfect. We'll link to it. I was going to say, even if that number is like not right, the fact that we're releasing microplastics is, and it's horrifying. Like, I had no idea until you mentioned this, like in conversation a while ago, that you were like, oh yeah, microplastic, like catch bag. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh no.
Yeah, no, the study that's linked to, it was the one where I was talking about how polyester cotton blends are slightly better. So basically that study found that polyester cotton blends were the best of a bad group because they released 138,000, and then polyester was just under 500,000, and then acrylic was above 700,000. So you have a pretty big range. It also depends. There's this whole debate over because it depends on how new your clothing is too. So some clothings, it seems like when they get older, they shed more. For some, they shed less when they're older. So that's like, there's this whole debate over whether you should replace your clothes more often, but I really don't think that's good because...
Yeah, fast fashion is its own problem, like...
Yeah. Now you got to build in the environmental and like social ramifications of the production process for that new item, and what are you doing when you dispose of it? Even if you put it in a thrift shop, someone else is going to wash that clothing. Like,
that's what I was just going to say. You're like, oh, older clothing like sheds more clothes. And I'm like, all of my clothes are from thrift shops. I am making an even worse environmental impact when it comes to laundry by trying to be a good person and buying secondhand. Like,
I really don't think so, though. I think the solution is to, maybe try on balance when you're getting clothing to lead more towards like cotton and wool, if you can. But otherwise, don't worry. Just assume that a lot of your stuff is synthetic and get like a guppy bag. Yeah. And use a Coraball too, because why not? But
and a lint lover, because I also have in-suite laundry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I suppose my landlord would not be upset if I added a lint lover, so I probably could.
Probably wouldn't even notice. You know, they're not going to know.
Probably wouldn't notice, yeah. So then I'd be... Even once I move away from here, could be having an environmental impact. That would be nice.
You sneakily leave it behind. Don't even tell them.
The radical lint lover.
Yeah, and then I guess when it comes to, I don't know, the human rights of laundry washing, I didn't get into that too much. I don't know if you did.
No, I mean, for me, it would probably be, human rights would probably come into play either when you're buying your washer or dryer, which is not a thing that in the foreseeable future I will ever have to engage with because I'm a renter.
Samesies.
Or it comes in at the detergent stage, and for that I genuinely don't know. It doesn't seem to be a thing that people have really...
My detergent was made by Canadians, so probably it's fine.
Hopefully in a province where there's a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah, not BC. Yeah.
So I feel like human rights, yeah, that's a value that we glossed over a little bit in this episode, but sometimes we're constrained by what people are paying attention to. So apologies for that. But I think if we want to maybe give people a takeaway before we sign out, I think it's two things. One, get a microfiber capture device as soon as you can, preferably... I mean, really, you could use all three if you want to. But I think as long as you're using 2 of the Guppy Bag, Coraball, and Lint Lover, you're doing well. And then the second thing is look at your detergent because you can probably find a cruelty-free one pretty easily. And you may even be able to find one that's in sort of a lower waste container. I know there are some that are in plastic or in paper containers rather than plastic. So those would be my 2 takeaways, I think.
Yeah, I would say so. And if you're washing 6 loads of laundry a week and you're not washing diapers or like for 4 children, then, you know, maybe give a couple of things an extra wear, you know?
Yeah, and don't wash in hot water. Because why?
Yeah, it turns out you don't need to. It's like, it's not even better for your clothes, so.
Look at us. We actually have practical solutions this episode. That's great.
That's unusual for us. Thanks for listening, everyone. That's all we have for this week. If you want to follow our ethical journey, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Pullback Podcast, or you can at Kristen and I directly at Kristen Pugh or at Kyla Hewson. If you wanted to yell at one of us specifically, that is welcome. If you guys have anything to add to this laundry episode, please do contact us. We're always interested in learning more. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
If I've been dancing and I've sweated it up, then yeah. But
true. Yeah. Depends what kind of evening event.
If it doesn't stink, then it goes back on the hanger. Yeah.
How spilly I've been. Yeah.